I used to think the worst thing that could happen to a person was failing at their dream. I was wrong. The worst thing is waking up one day and realizing you've become someone you don't recognize, and you can't point to the exact moment it happened, because failure is loud. It announces itself. But disappearance is quiet. It happens while you're being responsible, while you're doing the right thing, while you're surviving. This is not the story of how I lost my dream. This is the story of how I slowly forgot myself. I grew up in an average home. We weren't rich, we weren't poor. We could afford food, we could go to school, not the best schools, but good enough. Life felt stable enough to imagine a future. Dreams came easily back then. They didn't need permission. They didn't need approval. They just existed. One day, my dad asked me a simple question. What do you want to be when you grow up? I didn't hesitate. I said, I want to be a footballer. The room didn't explode with anger. No one shouted. There was just silence. And somehow, that silence said everything. Back then, football wasn't considered a real career. Real futures were doctors, engineers, pilots. I could see it on their faces. Not rejection, but disappointment. My dream didn't fit the shape of approval. My dad didn't stop me, and that matters. He didn't crush my dream. He negotiated with it. He said, if I could spell the word referee correctly, he would buy me football boots and register me at a football academy. I spelled it correctly. That moment stayed with me longer than I realized, because it taught me something early. Dreams were allowed, but only if they behaved. Only if they waited. Only if they didn't interfere with responsibility. So, I agreed to finish my education first. Football would have to be patient. I didn't know then that dreams are patient, but identities are not. Not long after, I was registered to a small football academy. I was still going to school, doing both, trying to be responsible and still hold on. I still remember my first friendly match. It wasn't a big stadium, no cameras, no crowd, but to me, it felt like everything. When I scored my first goal, the whole team celebrated like we had won the World Cup. In that moment, I felt invincible. I was the youngest on the team, the baby. After matches, I carried the balls. After training, I carried the kits. Sometimes they gave me jerseys to take home and wash. Some people might call that humiliation. To me, it was joy. Because for the first time, I felt like I belonged. Purpose doesn't care about status. It doesn't care about age. It doesn't care about titles. Purpose only cares about meaning. Back then, football wasn't pressure. It wasn't money. It wasn't survival. It was just love. Pure, simple love. Then exams came, and with them, instructions. Focus on school. Put football aside, just for now. I listened because I was a good child, because I believed there would always be time later. Around that time, a teammate asked to borrow my boots. His own pair was spoiled. I agreed. I didn't think twice because I trusted him. I didn't know he had plans to travel. I didn't know this was goodbye. When my exams ended, I went to his place to collect my boots. I remember that afternoon clearly. The sun was hot on my back. My heart was pounding the way it used to before every match. I knocked. No answer. Then a neighbor stepped out and said, "They've relocated, another state." Just like that, my boots, the ones I had laced up over and over again, the ones that carried my dreams, were gone. I stood there, not knowing what to say, not knowing what to feel. I walked home slowly, kicking stones, trying to understand how something so small could feel like the end of everything. Have you ever had a moment like that? When something you loved was taken away through no fault of your own? I knew my dad wouldn't buy another pair. How do I even tell him I gave out my boots to someone? And the football academy had grown bigger, more serious, more expensive, with new requirements. I couldn't afford to re-register. That's when I felt it. Not anger, not rage, just sadness. That was the moment football stopped feeling possible. Not officially, not loudly. It just slipped out of reach. When football began to slip away, when the boots were gone, and the path ahead felt uncertain, something else quietly returned. There was something I had loved as a child, something playful, something free. I used to dance in the sitting room. No plan, no audience, just movement. One day, I danced so well that my dad laughed. He clapped and gave me some money as a reward. My grandma was there. She watched me carefully, with that soft smile that felt like it saw right through you. She said, "This one will be a good dancer when he grows up." I didn't think much of it then. I was still chasing other dreams, still believing life had time. But her words, they stayed with me. Quiet, patient, waiting. When football no longer felt possible, when the academy felt out of reach, that memory returned. So I joined a dance crew. Not because it promised money, not because it promised a future. I joined because it felt familiar, because it felt alive. We rehearsed after school in a small hall. No mirrors, no luxury. Just music, with body moving as sink sweat and laughter. For the first time since football faded, I felt part of something again. I came home exhausted, but smiling, with music still echoing in my head. At first, I thought maybe dance could pay, but soon, it became something else. Not survival, not pressure, just pure joy. We practiced and practiced, until one day, we were really good. So good that rival crews hesitated to compete with us. I remember our first big competition. Other crews were strong, experienced, confident. But we had something else. Teamwork. We made our own music, our own effects, our own rhythm. We didn't copy anyone. We created. When the winners were announced and they called our name, time froze. The cheers, the hugs, the tears. That day remains one of the best days of my life. In that moment, I thought of my grandma, her smile, her certainty. She was right. There were other things I loved too. Things I never announced loudly. Things I never called dreams. Quiet interests, private joys, ways of expressing myself that didn't ask for permission. I loved painting. I could sit for hours, drawing, imagining stories, and creating characters. I used to think that one day I would make comic books. Not for fame, not for money, just because I loved it. No one taught me how to design. No one showed me the rules. I taught myself, slowly, curiously. I learned graphic design because I enjoyed creating, and not because I thought of it as a career. It was never about the future. It was about the feeling. I also loved running. I was fast, naturally fast. I competed for my school. I enjoyed the burn, the rhythm, the silence inside speed. Growing up, I believed the only people faster than me were my brothers. I never thought of myself as an athlete. It never crossed my mind that this too could be something more. I loved sport, movement, competition. But I didn't understand how many doors were open. I didn't know then that I wasn't confused. I was gifted. I just hadn't learned how to listen to myself yet. There was another place where my mind liked to go. Upward. I loved the sky, the stars, the quiet above everything else. At night, I would lie on the roof or stand outside and just look up. I imagined myself floating somewhere beyond this world. I wanted to be an astronaut. Space fascinated me, not because it was far, but because it was endless. Math came easily to me. Numbers made sense. Patterns felt natural. Math felt like the language of the universe. When I solved problems, it felt like understanding something hidden. Back then, learning didn't feel heavy. It felt like discovery. I read everything I could about space, about astronauts, about worlds beyond ours. In those moments, life still felt open. The future didn't feel narrow yet. Everything still felt possible. I didn't know then that life would soon ask for everything. I didn't know how quickly possibility can disappear. The year my grandma died, something changed. The house felt quieter, the laughter less frequent. The woman who believed in us was gone. Not long after, my dad got really sick. I remember the hospital, the smell, the machines, the silence between beeps. Seeing him unresponsive broke something inside me. The man who asked me about my future now lay still. Everything paused. Dreams, plans, and also school. I dropped out of school for almost a year. Not because I wanted to, because we couldn't afford it anymore. Medical bills piled up, My dad did everything he could. He sold his business, his car, his properties. Everything he had built, piece by piece, was gone. And still, it wasn't enough. My mom stepped in. She took charge. She carried the weight quietly, day after day, until her body couldn't anymore. She got really sick too. Now, both parents were sick. Some days, we had little to eat. Some days, nothing at all. Hunger became normal. We lived in a rented apartment, and we were owing. The debt grew silently. Every knock on the door felt like the end. Every sound outside felt like eviction arriving. Life had stopped asking. It had started demanding. We expected eviction. We prepared ourselves to be sent away. By every rule of the world, it would have been fair. But then the owner of the apartment called us. Not to shout, not to threaten, just to talk. He gave us two options. The first was to pack up and find somewhere smaller, somewhere we could afford. The second was to stay, to forget the old debt and start again. I remember standing there, listening, trying to understand what I was hearing. In a season where everything had been taken from us, a stranger chose kindness, despite our differences, despite our beliefs. Some humans are angels. That mercy didn't fix our lives. It didn't make us comfortable, but it kept us afloat. It restored my hope in humanity. I am forever grateful to that man. May God continue to bless him. After that, survival became the only dream. There was no space to ask what I wanted. There was only what needed to be done. I started working, not because I had direction, but because we needed food, because rent had to be paid, because bills didn't wait. Every day felt the same. Wake up, work, come home tired, repeat. Time stopped feeling like time. It felt like weight. I worked and worked and worked, not to build a future, but to hold the present together. Someone had to be strong. Someone had to provide. So I became that person. Responsibility didn't arrive loudly. It settled in quietly and stayed. I told myself, this is temporary, just for now. But days became months. Months became years. And slowly, without announcing itself, something disappeared. I stopped talking about dreams. I stopped imagining futures. Not because I didn't want them, but because they felt unavailable. Every paycheck felt like a small victory, and also like a betrayal. A betrayal of the boy who once dreamed of stadiums and stars. I was surviving, but I wasn't living. I was moving forward without moving anywhere. And one day, I realized something painful. I was living comfortably as someone I no longer recognized. At some point, I started feeling it. That quiet ache, that hollow space, the feeling that something was missing. I didn't know what it was at first, I just knew this couldn't be all there was. Some nights, I would sit outside and look at the sky again, the same stars I once dreamed of reaching, and I would feel it, that old pull. The boy who wanted more was still there. I had just buried him under responsibility. I tried different paths, online businesses, e-commerce, Forex, anything that promised escape. Not because I loved them, but because I was searching for meaning, searching for breath. Then one day, it became clear. I hadn't stopped dreaming. I had stopped believing my dreams deserved space. Life had taught me to choose survival over self, to be useful instead of alive. I realized something important. Strength isn't just enduring. Strength is remembering what made you feel alive before the world told you to stop. Football hadn't died. Dance hadn't disappeared. Art was still waiting. The dreams weren't gone. They were only forgotten. And remembering them felt like meeting myself again. The world may never hear my name. I may never play football professionally. I may never wear a spacesuit. I may never paint something the world remembers. And that's okay, because this was never really about becoming famous. It was about remembering who I was, the little boy who spelled referee correctly, who danced freely in the sitting room, who stared at the stars and believed he could touch them. He didn't disappear. He just waited. And I know I'm not the only one. So many of us buried our dreams under responsibility, under expectations, under survival. Not because we stopped wanting them, but because life told us now is not the time. But here's the truth. As long as you're breathing, you can always hit restart. It may not look the same. It may not come with applause. It may not turn into a career. But remembering what made you feel alive still matters. This channel exists for all of us who forgot something beautiful, for anyone who feels like they became useful instead of becoming themselves. So let me ask you something. What dream did you once chase with everything in you before life told you to stop? Take a moment. Think about it. What was it? And what made it fade? If you can, share your story in the comments. Big or small, painful or beautiful. Just honest. Your words might be the spark someone else needs today. This channel isn't just mine. It's ours. Every story, every me too, every quiet reminder that dreams don't die. They wait. Thank you for listening, for staying, for remembering. This is Voice of the Forgotten Dreams. Until next time, keep listening to the whispers. They still have something to say.